From Sydney, Australia, all the way to Portland, USA, two misfits hang out after class to riff on the B-sides of professional life. These are your Professional Misfits. Hello, friends. All the way from Sydney, Australia, I am your host, Christopher Sellers.
And from Portland, Oregon, I'm Brody Ipox.
And for Season 2, we are your Professional Misfits. We're back. We're back in this glass case of emotion,
Yes,
Brody,
we
in
are.
HD for those who are watching at home.
Yep.
How you feeling, buddy? Obviously, you've taken time off. You've been to Aspen. You've taken the kids skiing, then done the Maldives, as all entrepreneurs do. And now you're back recording the pod.
Yeah, that's what happened.
That's exactly.
I'm doing good. I'm excited to save this for the episode because I'm just excited to be back. Like it's weird that this feels like a room. You know what I mean? Like this is starting to become very familiar and comfortable. So we had our little break, and I kind of missed you.
It's a genuine bromance. It's a big season, bro. We got double the episodes. We've got 20 episodes. For those who are catching up, we're rolling out the Patreons. We're rolling out all the content. We're rolling out all the bonuses. We're growing the LinkedIn and Facebook groups. So if you want to find us and have a chat and vote on some of the episodes, that's where you can find us. But all the promos aside, episode 1, season 2. Season 2 is all about relationships. Misfits. So personal, professional, family, everything in between. And for the first 5 episodes or so, we've sort of sectioned that out to professional relationships. So the topic for today's episode is work relationships. Sometimes, always, never. Is it unprofessional? Have you ever hooked up with the boss? Brody.
No. Absolutely not. I'm throwing you under the bus first.
Wow. Wow. All right, so okay, we'll put it to the misfits. Like, let's have this chat. Let's have a reasonable chat. If you're working in the office, you go to the same place every day, 5 days a week, 40, 45 more hours a week. You're going to see the same people. Jenny in HR has made you sign the contract saying thou shalt not have relationships. Thou shalt respect the company. Thou shalt not, fire and brimstone and all that sort of shit, which of course is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. So it's like no one takes a job with the intent, to have a relationship or hook up or, sleep with the boss at the Christmas party. But this shit happens. So we want to know, Misfits, if it's happened to you. We're going to get into it, whether we've done it. It's, in our experience. But let's start with the simplest thing of all. Brody, is it unprofessional? Is it unprofessional to have an intimate relationship with anyone that you're working with?
I've kind of got 2 answers to that question because I've seen it both ways, to be honest with you. I've seen some pretty unprofessional shit when it comes to relationships in the workspace. And Give us an
example. Give us the dirty details.
So first time I was working in a team setting under like the marketing contingency. I was working with the sales department, and the head of sales was the wife and the CEO was the husband. And there was a definite miscommunication in some certain goals and patterns that were being brought up, and it turned into, and this was a meeting of 12 plus people,
right?
It's not just me, you know what I mean? It wasn't just like, oh, I'm watching these guys fucking have it out. It is their entire organization,
right?
And they're fighting.
Like at the boardroom table.
No,
darling, that's not what I said. Well, Jonathan, you mustn't have been clear.
Yep.
Right.
Oh, and I'm even talking about like seniority got brought up, like as it was like
Right. Right.
we're talking about emotional leverage at this point, and it was like, holy shit, what happens at home is like my biggest thing. So I've seen that, and that was bad. And
Mm-hmm.
what's even more bizarre is shit like that can hit you sideways because for all intents and purposes, these guys weren't bad on a day to day basis. Like that was kind of a one off situation, but that one off situation was drastic enough that, you know, you had people talking about leaving, you know, and
Well, yeah, I'm trying to put myself in that position, and I have been in similar sort of circumstances where, like, if that sort of tiff happens at work, like everyone else has got to show up the next day, you know, and it's normally pretending like nothing's happened,
totally.
you know. So we're not going to talk about what Jonathan likes in bed. We're not going to talk about Janet's preferences. We're just going to like head down and get on with, and that's sort of, that's starting to tease at my initial question, I guess, is like, it's work relationships are supposed to be like height of unprofessional, you know, height of being unprofessional, but how many husbands and wives are like CEOs and, you know, co whatevers, and you're expected to just, oh, that's okay, because they're married, and they, they
Mm-hmm.
they were married before, or whatever, or they may have even met working, but who knows, right?
Mm-hmm. No, and like I said, I mean that's where examples like that get kind of weird. You know what I mean? Because again, for all intents and purposes, they were pretty good. And you know what's funny is I actually the opposite, right?
Mm.
My other one, the other example, and I don't want to name names here, but these guys are wildly successful, both of them.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And what's funny about them is they worked so well together that they reached a point of success, right? And then what happened is they started to realize individual passions in the success, and they said, okay, this is what I want to do, and this is what I want to do. And right at the very end of my relationship with working with these guys, he split off to go write a book and she continued on with the business. And it was the most beautiful fucking goodbye. It was the most kosher fucking scenario. And again, they had worked amicably and beautifully together in leadership before that. And it was like, you kind of strived for it. You admired it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit, you know, like that's how it's done. Okay, I get it.
Do you know if they're still together?
Yeah, totally. Yep.
That's,
Yep.
yeah. See, and that's,
Actually, funny fact, both of them are still together. Both both couples are still
oh,
together.
right. Yeah, 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 yeah. So it's all right. That's
Uh,
because, yeah, because that's isn't like, isn't that the ideal? Like, not necessarily to work with your partner, but to have shared passions and also independent passions and drives that you can share with said partner. If they align, when they support you, if they can have a hand in it, fantastic. Like, isn't that sort of what we would all want and aspire to? And if you so happen to work well together, or if you so happen to have met, you know, at the same place,
mhm.
like, would that not be ideal?
Y- Yeah, and I mean that's kind of what I meant in the admiration piece of that is
Mm.
like those guys had it figured out. And you know, I'll say this. I'll say this to my example of the bad, right? You know, again, most part those guys were pretty damn good too, and that
Right.
was something that was impressive. And again, I think there was a realness in what happened in the meeting that wasn't polish. You know, they were misfits, you know what I mean?
Mm,
And for
mm,
all
mm,
intents
mm.
and purposes, it might not have been professional in the standard definition of professional. But these guys kind of did give an inside look that, hey, things aren't always easy here in leadership. We fight too. You know, like this is real shit. And we'll go back and forth for what we believe in. And there was kind of a solidarity in that where you knew that neither one of them was going to back down, and there's an unease there, you know what I mean,
Yep.
too,
Yeah,
because you're
yeah, yeah.
like that could be really bad, but at the same
Mm.
time, you know that if one of them was passionate about, say, something you were working on together, they'd go to bat for you. It wouldn't just be,
Mm-hmm.
oh, the husband said no, I can't. It would be,
Yeah, yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I mean? They took their positions seriously. It was like, okay, what are the names you use? Because I don't want to name Jonathan.
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Jonathan. Like seriously, I see it this way, and I want to do it. And then he goes, "Okay, Janet, you're right." And she might be fucking wrong, bro. She might be fucking wrong. So, it in a sense, even the uncomfortable side of the work relationships,
Yeah.
there's still some health in that, man. There's still some there's still some health in that.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, yes,
Sometimes.
right? Don't put somebody through it every fucking day. Like
No,
that's too much.
or it really does, as a couple working together, is sort of a make or break, and it will definitely call out those who do not have their shit together. I think I'm I think I'm speaking from, look, hospitality is a weird and wonderful place, but it's almost like I learnt the golden rule there, like never work with your business partner, because it's, especially in hospo, it's long hours from the beginning of the day till often the end, and you're on your feet and it's facing the public, and any, let's say 9 out of 10 couples that I've seen come in to like own and run a place, one may have survived, and even then it ain't healthy, you know, because I know you get no separation from the other, and God forbid you have kids,
Oh,
right?
right.
You know, so if you're now, there's I suppose there's a difference if you know, Jonathan's working the restaurant and you know Janet's doing the accounting. Like, cool. Like, so you're not actually in each other's face. Like the Italian calf that I work out on the weekends. Yeah, Tommy runs the shop, 5, 6, 7 days a week. But his wife does all the behind the scenes and sort of takes care of the kids and everything else. So he's running business side, she's running home side, and they've been together for years and years and years and years. And his oldest is 14, so they're
Mhm.
doing it all right. But I've seen, oh shit. So probably the most horror couple I've seen, it's every mistake that you could throw into the pot. Like he'd come from IT, but she had the money. Like she had daddy's money. And they bought a very successful cafe on a very popular strip in Sydney,
Smart,
knowing nothing
not
about
smart.
hospitality. Classic, right? But it's that classic, classic amateur logic of like, oh, I like eating in cafes. I could do this. I could run a cafe,
Yep.
literally, and then laid out hundreds of thousands.
Interrupt here. 90% of businesses. I
Okay,
mean,
okay,
seriously. As I've watched people grow and do this shit, you know what I mean. You're way in over your fucking head. If you come into this thinking that you know what it's going to look like, you just don't. I mean, unless you've done it, you just don't.
and it was, again, this was every car crash incident, because he'd come in sort of as a mid-tier somebody in IT or something, but then came in swinging his dick like, well, I'm the owner now and this is the way we're going to do it and whatever. And I mean, didn't even know how to make coffee as an owner of a cafe. Now, it's, I guess, for a little bit of context, like Australia's cafe culture is very, very different to the States, especially in Sydney. There's sort of this line: if you want good espresso, you go to Rome or you go to Australia. Like those, that's where we're at. So Sydney, thriving, very high quality tier cafe culture. It's where you go first thing in the morning. It's what you do for lunch. You know, if you're open
You
and
come
right,
into it with an IT
right,
background.
and no idea how to make coffee, right? And so then it's you know, the numbers, for some odd reason, the numbers that they were doing in the beginning, they weren't doing 3 or 4 months into running the place. Go figure. The wife is getting edgy because my husband can't seem to run this right. That was funny as well, because it became a polarizing thing of, not, we're in this together, how can we make it work? But
You're not
Jonathan,
performing.
right, Jonathan isn't running it right. So now I'm going to hire a manager. Fuck. I'm going to, yeah, bro. She hires a manager to run the place. So Jonathan can do whatever. So basically cucks him for the
Oh,
restaurant.
totally.
Bruh.
Totally.
And then there's sort of heated arguments upstairs in the office and everything else. And of course, she's got no idea either. So the manager was shit. The manager was the only guy I told that I thought I was gonna kill him. And no, for real, because
So he wasn't good.
no,
So
bro, he was the worst. He was the
so she
worst.
even hired help that didn't facilitate
Like
any sort of.
it's a complete clown show. Like yeah, and again like but like some sort of manager consultant, so no fucking clue. And I remember being upstairs in the office because he something about I can't remember what it was, but he basically sacked me on the spot and sent me home for some random reason. So I went upstairs to talk to Jonathan, the owner, and said, "Listen, this is what's going on with your boy, rah 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 rah." And I'm sort of having my moment. And Graham was the manager's name. And he's kind of like, "Don't you talk to him? You've got to leave the premises." And I'm like, "You listen, bro." I don't, because basically I said, the reason you sent me home is because I told you if you do that again, I'd fucking kill you. You heard that? That's a threat. I'm calling the police. And I'm like, call a fucking ambulance. It'll get here quicker.
Oh
So,
my God.
so yeah, and so then I left, and then you hear shortly afterwards like they have split, but now they're still trying to run this thing. But she's basically kicked him out of the restaurant, and then oh man, so yes, unprofessionalism. but
Jesus.
but and this is hospo, and everyone's got an example, I'm sure. But I guess what I really want to tease out in this episode is this expectation of corporate, generally
Mhm,
corporate, this expectation
mhm.
of corporate of even fuck, even though we're supposed to be adults and you've hired professionals, all this sort of thing, you're not allowed. Like we're going to sanction who can have a relationship and why not.
Oh, I mean,
Now,
and even talking about the fucking paper trails that they make you go through,
bruh,
like it's weird. It's weird shit. You know what I mean?
it's
We're
bizarre and
adults.
right, right.
The fuck?
Now there's a tiny part of me. Look, there's a tiny part of me that understands. Like on the off chance that something unsavory happens,
Two of your
right?
highest performers get together. They fucking leave.
Or someone very senior is sort of seen to be taking advantage of, the intern,
Ah,
right? Or something, right? And so HR, and we all know this, people and culture, but HR is there purely to insulate the company. It's got very, very, very little to do with representing said talent.
mhm, mhm, mhm.
So it's in what way and at every angle possible can we insulate the company from any sort of lawsuit or criminal action, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, no, shit. And I mean, when you phrase it that way and you talk about it in corporate, that's when you get to the pieces where you're like, oh, you can't argue against it. I mean, and really, realistically, I can't. If we're talking about brass tacks,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to convince anybody. But it's kind of in that same vein that we're talking about. We're adults. We're fucking adults. I'm sorry, but if I have the expectation that Johnny's getting fucking hit on by the manager and doesn't enjoy it, again, that's why HR is there. Let's insulate this. Let's fucking talk to the manager. Let's break this shit down and get everybody a kosher resolution again as adults. Johnny stopped it when it fucking first happened. He fucking had a place to go.
Mm.
And you know what I mean? Again, there's.
But in I don't know, in my experience, and even from talking from other women who have gone through something similar, it's like no, that's not the experience. It's like you're never going to take it to HR for a whole bunch of reasons, and partly because if I'm getting hit on, it's normally someone senior. It's no, and so they're more of an asset and of more value to said company. So we're not going to wrap them over the knuckles. We're definitely not going to punish them. But you, who's no one, and who is making the complaint and causing trouble, then didn't you sign something that said that you wouldn't you know.
Oh, well,
Now
that's
this is
fucked.
right. And so now this whole conversation we're going to park because we get into it, I think, in episode 3 for this season. We're actually going to talk about sexual harassment in the
Yep, yep,
workplace. I'll
fair.
share some personal experiences and whatever else, but we're strictly talking about relationships for today. But so you've never hooked up with the boss, Bodhi?
No, no, actually, interestingly enough, no, I have
What's
not.
wrong with you?
And what I've always been in a relationship. I've always been in a relationship, and
Boo. All right,
I know,
no, there he is.
but
He's a quality man, ladies and gentlemen. He's a quality
no.
man.
But look
High
here,
value.
I season 1, folks.
All
It's
right.
season 1. If you know, you know. But look, the thing is, I haven't had that exact scenario, right? But in terms of working relationships, I'm probably one of the weirdest examples because I do marketing. And within marketing, I've learned business logistics.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know how to start a business. I have a lot of family. I have a lot of intimate relationships that have utilized that, and that's a good
Mm-hmm.
thing. I'm not saying that
Mm-hmm.
as
Mm-hmm.
a bad thing. I'm happy. It fulfills me to do that, but that's working with your partner. That's working with your best friend. That's working, and it's just the thing is there's a way to do it, and it's for me it's always been, and I hate it because I don't like that word, but it's been compartmentalization. Like, look,
Yeah,
we're
yeah,
on
yeah.
we're on the same team, and this is an objective, and when we're not working on this objective, this thing, it's over here. We set it down over here, and
Mm.
there's no contention after the fact. There's no you know we know you know what I mean. And what's been really great is I've had some tough relationships that have kind of outlined the parameters of me being able to say what I need from that. So I worked with my best friend and we built a business. We built a successful business, but it sucked working together. It
Right.
sucked. It sucked. It sucked. We fought all the fucking time. We didn't have a lot of things that we agreed on. We kind of operated differently. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And for all intents and purposes, we were working the same caseload in different ways. That it was just hard. So after the fact, after I left, that kind of happened. I said no more. You know what I mean? Like if I'm going to work with someone, it's not these aren't what's the way to put this, requirements or mandates, but
Mm-hmm.
these are guidelines that I need to operate in, and I think it'll help our relationship, and it'll help us get somewhere in this endeavor as well, because we could get hung up on all the shit we want to fight about all day long. You know what I mean? Or you irritate me the day before and I don't end up following through on a task that we had talked about. That these kind of
Yeah.
very personal kind of things,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
let's not go there. You know what I mean? Let's just not fucking go there. And
Mm.
I think I've honestly been lucky enough that there's been quite a few people that I have worked with close to me that get it too. And look, I think if you find somebody that's aware and they're working towards something, whether it's a raise, whether it's new business, whether it's content creation, whatever the fuck it is, if they come into it with the awareness that who they're working with is on their team, we're on a team. It's a much different aspect than we're in a relationship and working on this thing.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
no,
That's
we're
that's a
on a
really good. That's a really good, clear take. I think so. If folks are listening at home, like just sort of establishing that distinction, um, but also what it would look like for said partner.
mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
if if you're partnered with, obviously most arguments or in business things come down to communication, and I see it one way, they see it something else. So is it a common vision, or are we driving in two different directions here? Because obviously that's going to put a strain on a relationship as much as it is a business. So
mm-hmm.
I think that's a really salient point of we've talked about it before. Like, let's discuss the idea, not the person. So
Yep.
you put the idea on the table, I've got no problem looking at it from every other angle. I'm going to go away and have personal views, biases, assumptions, and sort of make a decision on my own. But objectively on the table, I've got no problem looking at it from every angle and getting someone else's input on that. And if you
Mm-hmm.
can, to your point, if you can do that with your business, or at least get clear on this is the thing that we're building over here, this is home
Yep.
time, this is kids,
Yep.
this is sex, this is me by myself. Thank you.
Yep.
You know,
That's a huge one. That's a huge one. I think a lot of people too not only get lost in trying to put all this together, right? Whether it's having the relationship at work and how do I compartmentalize that and come home and we were just at fucking work together for 12 hours. What the fuck?
Yeah.
What do you want? What do you want me to do? I got to look at you for another 12.
Yeah,
you know, it that there needs to be that awareness of self and then that allowance of self for others, because fuck, that's real. That's so fucking real. It's that's one of the things, right? We all need that space, and whether it is alone time, whether it's fucking playing a video game, reading a book, fuck, having a conversation with your significant other, whatever it is, you need that space for you. And if it's not there, fuck trying to work anything. I mean, and especially trying to have a relationship at work and then bring it home. Oh my God. No fucking thank you.
Actually, it's funny. It's funny now because I just all of a sudden I remember that. Like, yeah, I used to work with my ex. This is crazy. Just, but we.
Well, that was
so
going to
we.
lead into my question, Chris.
All right. What's your question? What's your question?
Have you had a working relationship?
Yes and no. Like I've never hooked up with the boss. And as far as I'm aware, whenever I've been the boss, I don't think I've had relationships with people I've worked with. I don't think so, which is also very, very strange on film and theater because normally everyone's having a showmance. Everyone's fucking everyone. Always. And like couples, not couples, whatever. Like what happens on show, what happens on tour stays on tour, basically. But similar to you, I was in a relationship or just not interested. But my ex I was together with for 5 years, and we did meet because we were working together, but we were like both independent contractors contracted to these gigs, right?
Okay.
And she did have a boyfriend at the time, and I'd just written my first feature film, my indie feature film, and I was looking to self-produce and do all of this. So it's like, get your team together. I'm going to need an AD. I'm going to need a camera guy. I'm going to need all of this and that. And because we'd worked together, it's like I call her Isabel. You're the sort of girl who can get shit done.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that's the sort of person who I want on my team. So I gave her the script and said, look, this is what I'm working on. If it's for you, if it's you, if it's not, then fine. And she loved it and she was on board. So I'm like, cool, now I've got my AD, now we can start to build this thing. And basically over the course of, I don't know, a weeks or a few months, like we sort of started seeing each other, and she eventually broke up with the guy and moved in with me and whatever. But we'd still,
story for another time.
A story for another time. But we were still working contract for all of these little places. And it was, we never had a fight or anything at work. Like it was still, we'd jump on the back of my bike because I had my motorbike at the time. And so we'd ride to the gig. And basically once we got off the bike and then we walked in, it was kind of like, professional mode. You know what I mean? So we're still together. Everyone knows that. But it was just, it wasn't detached. It was sort of just like a different form of you.
Focused.
Right. Yes. Thank you. And focus to the task. Like we've got to work on this. So you're going to go over there. I'm going to go over here. The cool thing about it is because what you were saying earlier in terms of communication and understanding alone time, and I'm like a hardcore introvert. So even when we got to lunch break, we've got like an hour, maybe 2 hours for lunch, and most of the other contractors would kind of get together as a little group and go to the pub, have drinks, have, whatever. I go, cool, I'll see you when we come back, and go and have lunch solo. Because she knew I need my time away from all of this noise and people to just decompress and sort of have this space. And for all her flaw, well, no, at the time, and she was great for that, because me saying clearly, like, I just need some space and it's not actually about you. And she go, yeah, okay. And
God.
right, yeah, maturely accept it and professionally. And she goes, yeah, I'll see you. And then we'd all go back and we'd do the rest of the day, and then we'd jump on the bike and then we'd go home. And then it was, once we were out the door, it was life as usual. We might talk about the day or whatever, but
Something very enticing about that scenario
yeah,
you're framing.
well, look, when we were together and when it was good, the one thing that we had, which I value to this day, and I'll never give up in any other future relationship, was we had complete, clear and transparent honesty about, especially emotional honesty, like, this is how I'm feeling, or if you've pissed me off today, this is why you've pissed me off, and the ability to hear that without getting offended. It helped, I guess, because both of us were trained actors, so we could understand the need to vent. And and I could clearly address, like, I'm just going to vent. This is where things are at. Da 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 da. I don't know how I feel about it right now. And she's like, okay, well, what do you need? And vice versa, I could do that for her when she needed it, I hope. So professional, yeah, it was just a slight shift of gears. Even though when we were working contract and waiting in between to do certain jobs, you hang out with our other actors, so you're basically sort of being social anyway. But still, that very fine filter of what's appropriate, what's not, or even what we wanted to discuss or get into or express in front of.
Was that something that was unspoken, or again, did that fall into your guys' ability to communicate? Because
it's yeah, good question. Maybe a little bit of both. And look, at times, because a lot of the people that we worked with were our friends as well. So if they'd go like, "Hey, what was up with your weekend?" and if we'd had a bit of a wild weekend, we may or may not get into it. And fair enough, we were a little bit of the weird couple, but because we were so honest, like, there was no, I don't have to protect her feelings because she loves, respects, and trusts me, and she knows whatever I say isn't there to hurt her, and I'm not going to do that anyway. So Chris saying, cool, like, we're not going for lunch, and Chris going, cool, I'll see you later, isn't Chris rejecting the room. It's Chris just needing his own time, and she's cool with that. And if she's cool with that, everyone else is cool with that too.
Yep.
So in terms of, have I worked with someone I'm in a relationship with? Yeah, and that's a healthy version of what I have done. I've also been in a completely separate circumstance where it's been catastrophic and ended as a complete fucking nightmare. And again, we'll talk about that on episode 3.
Ooh, but coming. It's coming.
Right. It's coming. And I've also had I've had the in-betweens as well. I've worked with, look, I've funnily enough, working as a contractor, same gig, I've had more than one chick in HR or management or whatever hit on me or ask me out, or she's got wasted on a Friday night and wanted me to take her home just cause. And because I've rejected her, has then turned sort of nasty.
Oh, I've had that experience.
Right. And so here's the catch-22. So if it's unprofessional to engage in these sort of behaviors and whatever, and then when I'm the good boy and play by the rules for once, then, Janet, Janet goes back to work next week and says, Chris is gay. Because
what? How is that not a fucking AR or HR fucking?
Oh, because and that's the other thing, like, because your contract, like, fuck him. Here's the crowd that's employed. This is the
like
this
the
is the
fucking
team's contract.
Cool Kids Club. I've felt that before. Fucking
and also because, like, contractors, have no rights or rules or regulation when it comes to work.
Oh yeah, I'm only helping you build your business.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, what? We'll just get another one. Yep. Anyway. So yeah, that's my hot take. But it wasn't and maybe since we're talking about it, maybe there's a little bit of flexibility there as well. Because like if we're well, no, I mean we were a couple before we started working together, so and it wasn't overtly again like it wasn't anyone else's business. So for the most, and that was the other thing when we first started seeing each other. For the most part, it was on lockdown because there were a lot
Smart.
of friends. Well, there's a lot of friends. There were a lot of people that we worked with who were still friends with her boyfriend at the time. So
Ah,
if all of a sudden she's left his place, is now staying with me, yeah. Well, it
fair.
would put a lot of noses out of joint. So we
hmm
just decided
hmm
to be cool about it,
hmm
and not to
Look,
kind of throw it in his face.
and that's the thing. I mean, even we're talking about work relationships here,
Mm,
right? Even when the scenario is not perfect, th- just operating honestly and knowing that we're all adults. I know I hate to keep falling back on that statement, but I think there's a power in it. I think you give humans the credibility they deserve, and there's a shitload of credible humans out there, and it just looks like, hey, this is who we are. This is where we're at. It's none of your fucking business. If it
mm.
affects the work, it's your fucking business.
Right.
Absolutely. And that's where I'm interested for episode 3 now, because I think it will be a good segue into the adverse kind of situations
Mm.
where it's like it's not necessarily a relationship, it's the proposition or the attempt of, and
Yeah.
that can be a very different fucking scenario.
And also the reality that it can and does happen to men. So I again, well, something to be talked about later because I shared it on a LinkedIn post probably a couple of weeks ago, and it was just to raise the fact that like this happens to men, and to be honest, women know how this game is played,
hmm
so they exploit the
hmm
fact that they could hit on a guy and there'd be less to no repercussions because who the fuck's going to believe him, and don't guys always want it any chance they can get it, you
Oh,
know?
and I mean, to your point, like, and again, maybe I'll save it because it falls a little bit more in line with 3, but it wasn't so drastic because it was in the sense that it was a definite attempt at building a friendship. It was not like outwardly like I want to touch your butt, but it was it was also very obvious. You know what I mean? And like you said, it's interesting because she was a woman. I'm a man. I deflected. And as I started deflecting, and there was one particular instance, this was working at Zoomies. We had an audit, and look, it just got uncomfortable. Let me just say that
Right.
it just got uncomfortable, and um, deflection happened, and then it was kind of the same scenario. It wasn't Brody's gay, but it was something fucking wrong with him, or this
Right,
kid's
right, right.
weird, or like just any fucking excuse
Because
to
guys never say no.
right. Oh,
Guys have no
100%.
options.
There's right, and what's even more fucked is like my girlfriend at the time. She came in all the fucking time. They knew who she
Yeah,
was. They knew who she
yeah,
was. They like helped her
yeah,
at the register and shit.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and you're gonna fucking do some grimy shit like that, and then try to make me feel like a dirtbag because I'm not with it. Like I, what do you want me to do? So it's interesting. Yeah, I think episode 3 is gonna be fun. But I
Again,
did. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No,
No.
I think it's. I know we haven't resolved much today, and that's fine. But I think it leaves the end of this episode seems to leave us with this question of like, well, can we treat people like adults
Mm,
in a workplace? Like,
mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
this is the can we
Yep.
legitimately?
Yep.
Because I like yes, we know that people can form relationships and it can work out, or maybe not, or normally go nowhere, or whatever. That's all a possibility. But we always seem to predict or prepare or solicit for the worst,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and then they were having a relationship, but so and so was married, but he was seeing her on the side, and then they broke up because she wouldn't leave, and then someone gets jaded, and it gets really fucking nasty, and yeah, there's all those stories, but they're generally 1 in 100,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and those sort of relationships and dynamics happen everywhere, all the time, inside work, outside of work, any profession that you can name. So, and so can we treat people like adults? Because if there wasn't, the little contracts or this the fine print to keep you in line, then if you act like a prick in a relationship, then you're kind of going to get called out.
Fair. And I mean, and it goes to testament to what we were saying about that kind of thing being weird. And I mean, again, there is a degree of understanding there. I get it. I get it for exactly like you're talking about, and it is a funny question. We haven't resolved anything per se, but it kind of makes me feel that is the resolution. That I mean, and it comes down to the fact that so much of what we're talking about is subjective, and that sucks in the sense that we would all like a neat and tidy resolution. Like, yes, you can, and this is how you do it. We have those examples. We have them. They're there. People have done it. It's if you wanted to, I'm sure you could read a blog. But do you have it in you? Is the better question. Like you're saying, can we trust you to have it in you? And fuck, what a shame that sometimes you can't. You know what I mean? But
yeah. Oh well, that's a nice, not a bad place to land for a first episode of a second series.
I agree.
How you feeling?
Great. That was awesome. You're good. You're good conversation, man.
I get by. I've got my notes here. Of how to wrap up because we've got all this new shit going on. So next episode is what makes a good business partner. Slightly same but different, but not. So what makes a good business partner? Brody and I are going to talk about that. We might even talk about whether we make good business partners and whether this works. Who knows? How do you think? How do you think that's going to go, bro?
I think if we open the window, people are going to look in. That's for sure.
That's for sure. Everyone wants to know how the sausages are made.
Yep.
So, ladies and gentlemen, here we go. You can listen for free at Spotify and YouTube. That's how it works. You can watch us build and 2 weeks in advance on Patreon. So go check that out. It's Professional Misfits at Patreon. All the other details are there. Brody, people want to find you. When can they find you?
We have this amazing website. It's promisfitspodcast.com. And it's got all my relevant links. So that's where I want you to go to find me.
Nice. Same, you can find me there. You can find me direct at cssellers.com. That's it. We are done. There is no more. Episode 1 is in the bag. We've got 19 to go. Right?
We got this.
In the meantime, I've been Chris.
I've been Brody.
And you stay classy, Misfits. We'll see you on the next one.